3 hours can pass on a Wyoming county road without a single car coming the other way. Not a truck, not a tractor, not a face. Just the fence line ticking past, the sage running flat to a horizon that never sharpens, and the wind throwing fine grit against the side of the door. Out past Moneta, on a dirt county road that branches off the highway and keeps going, somebody has nailed up a hand-lettered sign. It does not advertise anything. It is a warning. If you get stuck out here, it says, in effect, you will wait a long time before another vehicle comes by. No cell signal, no tree to sit under, no house in view. Just the road and the wind and the long business of getting unstuck on your own. This is Wyoming. And this is the story of how people build a life inside that much distance. Not despite the emptiness, but out of it. Look down at the whole state from above, and the first thing you notice is how little of it is filled. Roughly 588,000 people are spread across nearly 98,000 square miles. That works out to about 6 people for every square mile, the lowest population density in the lower 48. Wedge the entire population of Wyoming into a single mid-sized American city, and you would still have room to spare. The land here is not a backdrop to human life. It is the overwhelming majority of what there is. And the people are outnumbered in more ways than one. Statewide, there are more than twice as many cattle as residents. Drive long enough, and the math starts to feel physical. A few hundred blackbacks grazing a slope, then nothing, then a windmill, then nothing again. Add the pronghorn. The herds average around 350,000 animals, and some of them migrate hundreds of miles between summer and winter range, crossing the same wind-scoured flats you are crossing, only on foot, every year, the way they have for far longer than any fence has stood. If a place like this is the kind of country you find yourself leaning toward, the long roads, the empty middle of the map, a like helps other people who feel that same pull find their way here too. Then we can get back to the road. Because the strange part is what all that space does to a single human life. Distance here is not an inconvenience you push through on the way to somewhere better. It is the medium you live inside. It shapes when you leave the house, how much milk you buy, who you call when the truck won't start. People who drive the stretch from Shoshone to Casper say it feels like crossing the moon. Flat, smeared, endless. One traveler ran nearly out of gas on that road. No signal, a paper map, and a vague idea of where he was, and felt the genuine fear of being a small thing in a very large nothing. You can read that fear 2 ways. One is the way a passing tourist reads it. This place is empty. The other is the way the people who stay read it. To them, the emptiness is not a lack. It is the thing they have, and increasingly, the thing they guard. There is a small tell planted right on the road that gives the whole arrangement away. On the highway signs at the edge of each town, Wyoming lists 2 numbers, the elevation and the population. And often enough out here, the elevation is the bigger of the 2. 3 hours can put 170 miles of sagebrush behind you. And somewhere in that long blur, the eye starts hunting for anything to read. It finds the green metal signs at the edge of every town. Each one carries 2 numbers stacked together, the elevation in feet and the population. And out on these roads, often enough, the bigger number is the one that has nothing to do with people. So drivers invented a game. Elevation or population? Guess which is higher before you read it. Locals have a joke that follows from it. A place only counts as a city if the population beats the elevation. By that rule, Wyoming is mostly not a city. Take Laramie. sitting on a high plain at roughly 7,200 feet. The town clears the bar. Barely, and only because 30,000 people happen to live there. Most of the others on the map never come close. You'll pass through towns with proud names and a population in the low hundreds, perched 1.5 miles above the sea. The sign says the town exists. The numbers say the land got there first. The towns that do exist mostly trace back to a single decision made by a railroad. The Union Pacific reached Wyoming in 1867, laying track west across the high desert, and it set down its division points and water stops at intervals that suited a locomotive, not a community. Cheyenne, Laramie, Rawlins, Green River, they were dropped onto the map like beads on a wire. The railroad needed a town every so many miles. The land filled in the rest with distance. Look at how the named places are spread. Cheyenne in the southeast corner, Casper in the center, Cody up near the Montana line. 3 towns, and between them a drive that eats most of a day, with the odometer turning over hundreds of miles of country where the elevation is the only number worth reading. The map looks busy until you measure it. Then you understand that the dots are far apart because the spaces between them were never going to be anything else. There is no shame in it here. People say the population figure with a kind of dry pride, the way you'd report a small harvest in a hard year. The point is not that the town is large. The point is that the town held on at all, at this altitude, in this wind, on a road the railroad happened to lay down 1.5 centuries ago. And the elevation number does more than win the game. It explains the rest of the state. It is why the growing season is short, and the snow comes early, and the air is thin and clean and faintly sweet. It is why a town of 300 can sit alone for 40 miles in every direction without anyone finding that strange. The high ground sets the ceiling on how many people the place will ever hold, and the people who stay have made their peace with the ceiling. They are not waiting for the population number to catch up. That admission is not a complaint. It is closer to a deed. The emptiness on those signs is the thing the residents own, and the elevation is its title number. But to understand why the land carries that kind of authority, you have to look past the towns entirely, to the ranges and the desert that were doing the math long before any railroad arrived. Between Shoshone and Casper, the land flattens until people who drive it say it feels like crossing the moon. Sage stretches in every direction, low and gray-green, broken by nothing but fence wire and the occasional fat bird startling up off the asphalt. There are no trees to mark the distance, so the eye gives up trying to measure it. The horizon does not sit at the edge of the land, it smears. This is the part of Wyoming that was here long before anyone thought to post a population beside an elevation. Look west from Cody, and the Absaroka Range walls off the sky. Dark, volcanic rock folded and refolded across tens of millions of years. Look east, and the bighorns answer it, snow holding in their high cirques into July. A town settles in the valley between them the way a coin settles into a cupped hand. The mountains were doing the arranging. The people only found the low ground later and agreed to stay. Drive a few hours south and the Wind River Range begins. Granite older than almost anything a person will stand on in their life. The eastern Shoshone and the northern Arapaho share the reservation that takes its name from that river. 2 peoples on one stretch of land, with histories here measured not in the 2 centuries since the railroad, but in a depth of time that makes the railroad look like last week. The rivers were named before there was anyone to write the names down. It is tempting to call this country empty. It is not. It is occupied by stone, by wind, by a silence that has weight. Near Cody stands Heart Mountain, a steep gray shape that rises alone off the plain. The Shoshone tell of a warrior who fought to keep the people he loved safe, and whom the land honored by turning him to stone. They say if you look closely, you can still see his face tipped up toward the sky. Whether or not you see the face, the mountain holds its position the way the story says it does, keeping watch, outlasting the watchers. The land here does not announce itself. It simply opens. On Route 26 toward Shoshone, the sage flats run on, mile after unbroken mile. And then, without warning, the ground drops away and Hell's Half-Acre appears, a sudden wound of eroded badland gouged into the otherwise level desert. No sign builds up to it. One moment there is flat scrub, and the next there is a chasm of red and gray spires that wind and water have been carving since long before the first wagon crossed this ground. Drivers brake hard. The country never told them it was coming. That is the lesson the ranges and the desert teach, before any town has a chance to. The terms were set in advance. The growing season, the early snow, the thin, sweet air, the distance a person can travel without seeing another soul. All of it was decided by stone and weather that have no interest in human convenience. People settled inside those terms anyway. They learned which valleys held the snow and which let it slide off, which slopes the wind scoured bare and which it spared. They did not bend the land. They read it and arranged a life along the few lines it allowed. So when a rancher near Moneta drops a tailgate at first light and looks out at the same gray horizon his grandfather looked at, he is not surveying scenery. He is reading a document older than his family, older than the reservation lines, older than the names on the map. And the longest, plainest, most insistent of those conditions has nothing to do with stone at all. It is the wind, and the cold behind the wind, and the way both of them quietly take charge of how a week in Wyoming actually gets lived. Ask a Wyomingite about the seasons, and they will tell you they got all four in one afternoon. Snow at breakfast, sun by noon, a wind by 3 that strips the warmth back out of the day. It is a joke, but it is also a schedule. In a place where the land already decides how far a person can travel, the weather decides whether they go at all. Step out the door in Thermopolis, the small town pinned against the Bighorn foothills, and the air tells you which version of the year you have woken into. Winters there fall to around 12 below zero. Summers climb to 112. The same valley, the same street, swinging 124 degrees across a calendar. And people plan a whole life inside that swing, choosing when to cut hay, when to fix fence, when to simply stay home and let the day pass. The wind is the constant. It runs at 40 miles an hour on an ordinary day, and gusts to 80 when it means it. What surprises newcomers is the texture of it. It does not arrive in dramatic bursts and then relent. It throws fine sand at you all day long, a steady abrasive hiss against the truck door, the back of the neck, the corner of the eye. You stop noticing it the way you stop noticing your own pulse, and then a visitor mentions it, and you remember it has been there the entire time. The cold is not a number on a screen. It is a thing that decides whether your morning happens. The lowest reading ever taken at Thermopolis was 44 below in January of 1930. And old-timers will tell you about winters mean enough that an unheated truck would not turn over at all. You did not run a late errand on those mornings. The engine block was frozen solid, and the day rearranged itself around a machine that would not start. You waited. You found a warmer building. You went tomorrow. So the calendar of a Wyoming week is not really the calendar everyone else keeps. The hay does not wait for the weekend. It waits for the dry window between two storms. And when that window opens, everything else is set aside. Fence work follows the thaw. A trip to town gets pushed because the wind has picked up and the highway out toward the open ground is starting to white out in the borrow ditches. There is a phrase ranchers use for the in-between months. The brown stretch when the snow has gone but the grass has not come. A kind of waiting season nobody markets to tourists. It is not pretty. It is the price of admission for the 3 good months on either side of it. And that is the quiet bargain of the place. The weather is not an interruption of normal life here. It is the thing normal life is built around. The calendar nobody printed. The boss nobody elected. People do not fight it. They read it, the same way they read the land, and they arrange the week to fit. Which raises a smaller, stranger question. If the wind never quite stops, and there is nothing out on the open ground to break it, no tree, no fold in the land, nowhere for anything to hide, then what happens to the man who has to spend a whole August day sitting still in the middle of it? A gnat will always climb. Out on a mown hayfield, where every blade has just been cut down to stubble and there is not one thing standing taller than a fence post for a quarter mile, the highest point around is the top of a man's head. The swarm finds it within seconds. This is the part of summer nobody puts in the brochures. A transplant from the flat, boring middle of Montana, a man who thought he understood empty country, described a single August day in the Wyoming hayfields, and the detail he kept coming back to was not the heat or the wind, it was the gnats. Mow the grass for hay, and you take away the last thing the bugs could settle on. Nowhere to scatter. So they go for the one high point left in the world, and in seconds you cannot stand it, and your ears are bleeding. There is a trick for this, and it is the kind of trick a place teaches you only after it has already hurt you once. You tie a piece of old clothing to a stick and mount the stick somewhere above your head on the tractor. The gnats, dumb and faithful to their one instinct, go for the higher point instead of yours. You drive your rows and watch them devour the rag. An old towel will not last the day. A shirt comes apart in pieces, falling off in shreds while you steer. You are, in effect, feeding the field a decoy version of yourself so it leaves the real one alone. Think about what that means as a daily ritual. A grown man on a machine worth more than his truck, rigging a flag of his own discarded laundry just to keep the air breathable. It is absurd. It is also exactly the kind of small, hard-won knowledge that the open ground hands out for free, one summer at a time. The bugs do not stop at your head. Drive these county roads for a few miles in summer, and the windshield turns greasy. Not spotted, greasy. A smear of insects and the fat, slow birds that feed on them, pheasants and others too unbothered to get out of the way. There is so little traffic that the wildlife has never learned to fear it. You are the rare event on a road that sees almost nobody, and the glass keeps the record of every living thing you met that didn't move in time. And underneath all of it, the wind. Not the dramatic gusting kind that makes the news, but the constant kind. Fine grit thrown against your neck and arms hour after hour while you sit still in the one open seat in the middle of nowhere. No shade comes, no relief comes from the land, because the land offered none in the first place. It was mowed flat for a reason, and the reason was hay, and the hay does not care that you are uncomfortable. This is what the emptiness asks of the people who actually work inside it. Not poetry. A towel on a stick. A greasy windshield. A long day in the wind with no tree to hide behind, because there has never been a tree. And the man on the tractor knew that before he climbed up. He stays anyway. He'll do it again tomorrow and the day after, until the hay is in. The open ground does not make this easy, and the people who live off it have stopped expecting it to. They simply learn the next small trick, and the next, until the place that tried to drive them off the field has, without ever meaning to, taught them how to stay on it, which is its own kind of arrangement, and it costs more than gnats. Out here, even the simplest errand has a price measured in hours. A trip to the grocery store is not an errand in much of Wyoming. It is an expedition you plan for, days out, the way other people plan a flight. You do not run out for milk here. You run out of milk, note it, and wait, because the nearest place that stocks it the way you want is not around the corner. It is across a county. And so the list grows on a slip of paper held to the refrigerator by a magnet, one item at a time, until it justifies the diesel and the daylight a real trip will cost. That trip has a name in households all over the state. It is the Walmart run. It is not a chore. It is the chore. A whole day folded around it like a holiday. And the family that lives outside a real town saves up everything for it. Prescriptions, the kids' new boots, the part for the truck, the dog food. You do not make the drive twice when once will do, because the second drive is 2 hours each way you will never get back. For people in Cody, that math runs north. The nearest target sits 2 hours away in Billings, Montana, across the state line. And a Billings day is a committed thing. Leave before the light is good, eat lunch out of a cooler in the parking lot, come home in the dark with the back of the truck full and the gas tank empty again. Cody, more than 10,000 people, didn't get its first Starbucks until about 4 years ago. Out here, the franchise arrives last, if it arrives at all. What surprises people who move from a city is not the distance itself. It is what the distance does to convenience, the thing they thought was a birthright. Order something online, and the box does not come tomorrow. In some Wyoming towns, Amazon takes 5 days to reach the porch. 5 days. You learn, fast, to stop ordering the thing you need now and start ordering the thing you'll need in a week, which is a different way of living inside time entirely. So the local store carries the weight the warehouse cannot. Outside the bigger towns, it is an IGA, the Independent Grocers Alliance, a banner small markets fly so they can stock a shelf without a corporate name above the door, or a mom-and-pop store that has stood on the same corner for 30 years. It does not have everything, it has enough. And the people who run it know which families are out on the far roads and roughly when they'll come in. On the Wind River Reservation, that hub is Riverton. Families drive in from the open country around it to fill the cart for the week, because Riverton is where the week's supplies actually live. The drive itself is mostly flatland and low hills, a few range horses standing along the fence line, and then a town, and then the long road home again with the trunk loaded. This is what the emptiness charges an ordinary household, in a currency that never shows up on a receipt. Not money, hours, fuel, the patience to want something on Monday and receive it on Friday. The discipline to never, ever forget the one thing that would force the whole drive a second time. People who grew up with a store on every corner find this unlivable for about a year. Then something shifts. The trip becomes the rhythm instead of the interruption. You stop resenting the 2 hours and start using them. The phone calls you make on the road, the list you finally finish, the quiet of a cab with nothing in the windshield but sage and sky. And the gallon of milk, when you finally set it on the counter at home, is not just a gallon of milk. It is the visible end of a day's work, carried back across a distance most people will never have to cross for it. Out here, even that is something you earn. Which raises the question of what happens when the distance runs out, and there is exactly one lit building left in an hour of nothing. The day before, the milk had been the prize at the end of a 100-mile loop. The next morning, on a different road, the prize is smaller and far stranger. A working pump. Take Route 26 between Casper and Shoshone and watch the needle drop. Out here, a man named Rainier Camino once towed a motorcycle behind an old Ford, paper map on the seat, no signal in any direction, watching the gauge fall toward the peg. There was nothing to do but keep driving and hope. And then, when the truck was running on fumes, one building appeared out of the sage, a single lit structure in an hour of nothing. Highland. Highland is not a town in any sense a city dweller would recognize. It is one building doing 4 jobs at once: gas station, convenience store, bar, and motel, all under the same roof, the way a remote outpost has to be everything because there is nothing else within range to be anything. The pumps out front were the old kind. The display nothing but little metal tabs that roll over as the gallons climb, a padlock hanging off the handle. You do not just swipe a card and go. You go inside and find a person. Inside, the convenience store half gave way to a bar around the corner, and around that corner stood 2 men, by the look of them, a father and son, the old man holding a Remington shotgun in each hand, mid-argument about whether the new models were worth a damn. Seeing a stranger walk in, the old man did the most natural thing in the world out here. He handed both guns to the newcomer and asked which one felt heavier. That is the texture of the place. A man you have never met, miles from any witness, hands you 2 firearms because he wants a tiebreaker. The son took the cash, unlocked the pump, and they talked dirt bikes while the tank filled. Then came the invitation. Grab one of the bikes, ride along to check some wells, come back for beers and shooting, make a night of it. A genuine offer, no strings. Here is the strange part, and it is worth sitting with. The traveler said no, not because the offer was sinister, but because no one on Earth knew where he was. That is what total distance does to a stranger's kindness. It turns generosity into a calculation. Have you ever been somewhere so far from anyone that a friendly invitation made you nervous instead of grateful? It is a particular kind of loneliness, and we'd genuinely like to hear about it in the comments. The offer was probably exactly what it looked like. A man who lives an hour from the nearest neighbor was bored, and a fresh face had walked in off the highway. Out here, company is rare enough that you grab it with both hands, the way the old man grabbed those shotguns. The suspicion belonged to the traveler, not the place. That is what one lit building in an hour of nothing comes to mean. Not menace, not even quaintness. It is the human distillation of everything distance does. The way it forces one structure to be a town, one stranger to be the whole welcoming committee, one banner reading only "Bikers Welcome" to stand in for an entire main street that does not exist. He filled the tank, said his thanks, and drove on. Behind him, the single light shrank back into the sage, and somewhere past the next rise, where even Highland's lonely welcome runs out, distance asks a harder question. What happens when the road itself disappears, and the only thing standing between a stranded family and the cold is whether a stranger decides to open a door? The whiteout does not announce itself. One minute the highway runs clear toward Midwest, the oil town north of Casper that the wind seems to have nailed to the ground. The next minute, the snow comes sideways, and the road, the fence line, the sky, and the family's own hood all dissolve into a single, screaming white. This is the other face of distance, not the lonely tank of gas at Highland. Something colder. Out here, a whiteout can shut a stretch of road for hours, sometimes days, with cars buried where they stopped and nobody coming to dig them out fast. There is no service station around the next bend. There is no next bend you can see. A family caught in one near Midwest had the snow take the world from them, and they sat in a stalled vehicle with the temperature dropping and the wind doing the only thing the wind ever does here, which is keep going. The people of Midwest took that family into a church. They gave them a warm meal. They gave them beds for the night and asked nothing in return. No obligation, no story, no payment, just food and a place to be out of the cold. The man who tells it now still cannot quite get over it years later. They didn't have to do that. He has never forgotten it. Wyoming people, he says, are the best. Think for a moment about what that requires. Not the kindness. Kindness exists everywhere. The infrastructure of it. In a place with a hospital 2 hours off and a tow truck that might come tomorrow, the church basement is not a nice gesture. It is the system. When the road disappears, the thing that stands between a stranded family and frostbite is not the county. It is whoever lives close enough to open a door. That changes what neighbor means. In a city, you can go a decade and never need the people on your floor. The services catch you before the strangers ever have to. Here, the services are too thin and too far, so the strangers are the services. A man an hour from his nearest neighbor will still drive out in a blizzard to check on that neighbor's stock, because he knows with absolute clarity that the day will come when he is the one stuck in the ditch. This is the ethic distance builds. It is not sentiment. It is survival turned into habit, though no one out here would call it that. They would just say, you help. You feed people. You give them a bed. You'd want the same. It is also why the welcome at a place like Highland is real and not a performance. The same scarcity that makes a man hand a stranger 2 shotguns to compare makes a whole town open a church to a family it will never see again. Company is precious because it is rare, and help is sacred because one winter it will be you needing it. The family ate their warm meal and slept, and in the morning, the road came back the way it had vanished, all at once, the white pulling apart to show the sage and the long, empty highway again. They drove on. The town went back to its quiet. Nobody made a fuss, but the man kept the memory the way you keep something you cannot replace. Because what he received in that church was the one thing the emptiness cannot manufacture on its own and cannot survive without. The certainty that when the world goes white, someone will be there to open the door. And that certainty is not evenly given. The same small-town closeness that saves a stranded family can curdle when the face at the door is the wrong one. But before we get there, drive a few hours east to where that closeness simply waves at every face it knows. Walk the single downtown street in Cody, and you will likely meet 3 people you already know before you reach the end of the block. This is the other edge of the same blade. In a town of just over 10,000, anonymity is not on offer. The woman who came home from Texas walked that one road with her mother and ran into 3 people she knew personally. Every one of them stopping to ask after her partner, to ask if she was happy, to say welcome home. She described it as stepping into a Hallmark movie, Christmas decorations in the storefront windows, a paper coffee cup from one of the hole-in-the-wall joints warming her hands inside a giant coat. That coffee is worth pausing on. Cody got its first Starbucks only about 4 years ago. For most of its history, your morning cup came from a counter where the person pouring it knew your name and your truck, and probably your father. So downtown stayed downtown, one street doing all the jobs a downtown has to do, because there was nowhere else for those jobs to go. Here is the part that surprises people raised somewhere larger. In a place this small, your private business is faintly public, and that is mostly how everyone wants it. Consider what happens at the end of the block. A man gets a new deer rifle, and to sight it in, he does not drive to a range an hour away. He walks 3 blocks to the edge of the street and shoots. Nobody calls anyone. A few neighbors wander over to jabber for a while, lean on a fence, weigh in on the scope, the load, whether the old rifles held their 0 better than the new ones. The gunfire is not an alarm. It is an invitation to come stand around and talk. That ease is not lawlessness. It is the deep knowledge of who everyone is. When you can name the man holding the rifle, and his father, and the truck he drove up in, a stranger's panic never starts. But the same density of acquaintance has a darker setting. The eyes that welcome a homecoming daughter can also decide that someone does not belong. Intimacy does the sorting. It welcomes and it watches with the very same eyes. If you have lived somewhere where a single grocery run meant running into half your graduating class, tell us what that felt like in the comments. Whether it kept you honest or kept you wanting out. For the people who stay, the smallness is not a limitation they tolerate, it is the thing they guard. Mountains on 3 sides, one main street, a Starbucks they regard with mild suspicion. You can see the Absarokas or the Bighorns or Heart Mountain from almost anywhere in town, and you can see almost everyone you know on a single sidewalk. Both facts come from the same source. Not enough people to get lost in, not enough room to hide. 300 miles east of that sighted-in deer rifle, the same single street that welcomes a homecoming daughter with 3 handshakes has another way of working. The eyes do not always say welcome home. Sometimes they just say watch. An Arapaho family loads into the truck for the drive to Riverton, the way the ones who live closer in do most weeks. Riverton is the shopping town, the place with the Walmart and the grocery aisles the reservation itself does not have. It sits at the edge of the Wind River Reservation, the land the eastern Shoshone and the northern Arapaho share. 2 peoples on one stretch of ground, an arrangement nobody chose and everybody has lived with for generations. The drive is the easy part. Flatland, low hills, a few range horses standing in the sage. The hard part begins inside the store. A woman sees them coming down the aisle and pulls her purse in close against her body. That is all. A small motion, the kind you could almost miss. The family does not miss it. They have learned to read that motion the way a rancher reads weather, and it carries the same weight. This place has decided something about you before you have said a word. Here is the part the welcome home story leaves out. The same smallness that lets a town fold a stranger in can also fix a person in place and keep them there. In a town of a few thousand, you do not get to be anonymous. The clerk knows your face. The shopper 3 carts back knows it too. And if the thing they think they know is your skin before your name, there is nowhere in a town that size to step out of that gaze. The intimacy that feels like grace to one family feels like a held breath to another. The grandmother carries the older version of it. She grew up around Riverton, and she will tell you the stairs are not new. When she was about 13, walking the sidewalk with her cousin in the rain, 4 men in a car swung in close to a puddle they could easily have avoided and soaked the 2 girls on purpose. 60 years on, she says the prejudice is still here. Quieter, maybe. Dressed differently. But the same eyes. This is the cost nobody puts on a brochure about wide-open country. The emptiness that residents prize, the not enough people to get lost in, is the very thing that makes a clutched purse impossible to walk away from. Watching and welcoming run on the same machinery. In a city of millions, a stranger's panic dissolves into the crowd. Out here, there is no crowd to dissolve into. There is one aisle, one town, one road home. And a family that drives it, knowing exactly what waits and goes anyway. Because the milk has to come from somewhere. They finish the list, they pay, they load the bags and point the truck back toward the reservation, back across the flatlands and the low hills and the horses standing in the sage. The drive home is the easy part again. By the time the road bends toward the Wind River, the store is behind them, and what is ahead is the land their family has lived on far longer than the town has been there to stare. It is worth holding that contrast a moment. The same square mile that asks one family to prove it belongs is the square mile where the next generation is born already knowing it does. Kids who will learn the river before they learn the wider world. Watch a child here at the wheel of a four-wheeler, and you forget, for a second, that there is a town anywhere within an hour of the dust they are kicking up. They grow up on dirt bikes and snowmobiles, floating the Wind River in an inner tube before they are old enough for a learner's permit. Fishing the streams of the Bighorns in the 3 good months of summer when the snow finally lets go of the high country. The land that asks an Arapaho family to prove it belongs is the same land that hands its children a kind of fluency before they can read. It comes early, this fluency, and it comes without a classroom. By the time a kid in Thermopolis or Lander has spent a few summers chasing deer at night across the flats, they know the country the way other children know the layout of a cul-de-sac. The schools folded in deliberately. Children here are taught to respect nature and to know the history of the land underfoot, whose it was, whose it still is. What a warrior turned to stone on Heart Mountain meant to the people who named it long before a survey crew ever did. One woman who grew up in Cody put it simply. Out in the wider world, she was startled to find how few adults knew how to read a mountain, a season, an animal's mood. There is a joke that travels the towns every June. It is not summer, people say, until the first headline runs about a tourist who got too close to a bison. The children laugh at it because they already understand the line the visitors keep crossing, that the animal in the meadow is not scenery, that the country is not a postcard you can lean into for a photo. They learn the distance you keep before they learn long division. Float the Wind River with a family on a hot afternoon, and the lesson is everywhere and invisible at once. The kids know which channel runs fast, where the cold spring feeds in, which bank the rattlesnakes like. Nobody lectures. The river teaches, the way it has taught here for a very long time. And the parents only watch. What is striking is how rarely these children leave for good. One family near Lander counts 5 generations who have stayed put for roughly 200 years. Long enough that the state intends to throw them a party. Long enough that a great-great-grandfather lies buried inside the walls of an old fort. They will tell you, the ones who stay, that you could live a whole life here and never see all of it. That is not a complaint. It is the reason they remain. So a child here learns the land before the land's edges. The names of the peaks come before the names of the presidents. The smell of sage after rain. The particular silence of a winter that strands a truck. The way the wind never quite stops. These arrive first, get learned in the body, become the floor under everything else they will ever know. The wider world comes later, and always feels a little second-hand by comparison. It is a strange inheritance to hand a 5-year-old. Not money, not connections, but a square of emptiness so large you cannot reach the end of it, and the quiet certainty that it is yours. They grow into it the way a tree grows into open ground, roots going deep because the wind gives them no other choice. And then, one day, they are the ones watching from the bank while the next batch of children floats past, already fluent, already home. But the inheritance is no longer secure. In Jackson, the median home now costs more than $2 million. And the people who scrub those countertops and change those sheets drive in from another county to do it. The math of the place has come undone. A service worker pours coffee in a town where a one-bedroom rents for close to $3,000 a month, then climbs into a truck at the end of the shift and drives an hour or more home. Because home is the only place within reach of a paycheck. The work is here. The living is somewhere else. The distance that the rest of Wyoming treats as its own has, in this one valley, been turned into a fence. This is the part that the postcard never shows. Wyoming charges no state income tax, and that single fact has done more to reshape the place than any pipeline or boom. Money moves toward places that do not tax it. The wealthy arrive, buy the view, and the view stops being something a ranch hand can afford to wake up to. You hear it most clearly in the corner of the state where the old families still hang on. Down in Afton, in Star Valley, a resident put it plainly enough that the bitterness was its own kind of clarity. He is hoping, openly, for a few brutal winters. Not for the snowpack, not for the ranching, for the deterrence. A run of 40 below nights and roads closed for days is, to him, the last fence the place has left. A wall of cold no amount of money can buy its way through. It sounds harsh until you understand what he is watching disappear. The fear is specific. It is not crowds in the abstract. It is the cowboy cosplay ranch. Thousands of acres bought by someone who wanted the look of the West without the weather of it. Fenced off, gated, run by a manager who flies in. The lifelong family that worked the next valley for 4 generations cannot match the offer. And one day, the road they always drove is posted private. The land is still there. It just no longer belongs to anyone who grew up on it. Here is the strange knot at the center of it. The emptiness was always the thing Wyoming people owned in common. The miles, the silence, the certainty that you could drive for an hour and the country would still be yours. Wealth does not fill that emptiness. It privatizes it. It takes the one thing everyone shared and turns it into the one thing only a few can hold. So let us ask you something, because you have come this far into the open with us. Have you watched a place you loved get priced out from under the people who made it what it was? A town, a coast, a mountain that quietly stopped being for the people who lived there? Tell us where it was and what it cost. The comments below are the one stretch of country here that nobody can fence off. Because the wish for hard winters is not really a wish for suffering. It is a wish to stay reckoned in the old currency, in winters survived and miles driven, not in dollars bid. The people who say it are not asking the world to leave them poor. They are asking it to leave them theirs. And that is the quiet fear underneath all of it. That the emptiness Wyoming spent generations learning to live inside could, in the end, be the most valuable thing it has, and the first thing taken. A woman who left Cody for Texas says that when the wind blows hard down there, she finds herself missing how sweet the Wyoming air was. It is a strange thing to miss. Texas wind is warmer, gentler, less likely to take the door out of your hand. But it carries the smell of a place crowded with people. And the air she remembers carried almost nothing at all. Sage, snowmelt, the cold off the Absarokas, and beneath all of it, a kind of emptiness you could breathe. That is what she misses. Not the mountains, not even the town. The thinness of it. The room. This is what Wyoming reckons in, after everything. Not in dollars, though the dollars have arrived. Not in acreage or cattle counts or the population numbers on the highway signs. Life here is measured in 2 units, and a resident will give you both without thinking. Miles driven, to the grocery store, to the hospital, to the nearest town with a Target, to anywhere at all. And winters survived. The -40 mornings when the truck would not start, the whiteouts that buried families on the road to Midwest, the seasons that decided your week and asked nothing of your opinion. Add those 2 figures together, and you have a life. Not a poor one, a full one in the old currency. The man at Highland checking his wells, the transplant haying behind a stick rigged with old cloth, the Arapaho family making the long drive to Riverton, the children floating the Wind River before they can drive. They are all paying in the same coin, and they all know roughly what their balance is. If this is the kind of place you want more of, the slow ones, the specific ones, the towns most lists skip, subscribing is how you find the next one. And there is another coming soon from somewhere that will feel like the opposite of this. And if someone you know has ever talked about disappearing for a while into open country, send this their way. That is how a quiet channel finds the people who are already looking for it. Because here is the thing the passing driver never quite sees. From inside a car at 75, the long stretch between Shoshone and Casper looks like nothing. Like the part of the trip you endure to reach the part worth stopping for. Empty. Wasted. A place that has not happened yet. But the people who stay do not see a lack. They see the one thing wealth cannot manufacture and crowding cannot return. The ability to drive for miles with no sign of another living soul, and to feel that as fullness rather than absence. The emptiness is not what Wyoming is missing. The emptiness is what Wyoming has.